The Vedas are a large body of texts originating in ancient India. Composed in Vedic Sanskrit, the texts constitute the oldest layer of Sanskrit literature and the oldest scriptures of Hinduism. Hindus consider the Vedas to be aparusya, which means not of a man, superhuman, and impersonal, authorless. Vedas are also called Shruti literature, distinguishing them from other religious texts, which are called Smrti. The Veda, for Orthodox Indian theologians, are considered revelations seen by ancient sages after intense meditation, and texts that have been more carefully preserved since ancient times. In the Hindu epic the Mahabharata, the creation of Vedas is credited to Brahma. The Vedic hymns themselves assert that they were skillfully created by Rishis after inspired creativity, just as a carpenter builds a chariot. There are 4 Vedas: the Rig Veda, the Yajur Veda, the Sama Veda and the Atharva Veda. Each Veda has been subclassified into 4 major text types: the Samhitas, the Aranyakas, the Brahmanas, and the Upanishads. Some scholars add a 5th category, the Upasanas. The various Indian philosophies and denominations have taken differing positions on the Vedas. Schools of Indian philosophy which cite the Vedas as their scriptural authority are classified as orthodox. Other Sramana traditions, such as Lokayata, Karvaka, Ajivika, Buddhism and Jainism, which did not regard the Vedas as authorities, are referred to as heterodox or non-orthodox schools. Despite their differences, just like Sramana traditions, various Hindu traditions dwell on, express and teach similar ideas such as karma and moksha in the 4th layer of the Vedas, the Upanishads. Etymology and usage. The Sanskrit word vyakutda, knowledge, wisdom, is derived from the root vid, to know. This is reconstructed as being derived from the Proto-Indo-European root *qued, meaning see or know. The noun is from Proto-Indo-European *quigos, cognate to Greek epsilon delta omicron sigma, aspect, form. Not to be confused is the homonymous first and third person singular perfect tense vyakutda, cognate to Greek omicron delta alpha oida, I know. Root cognates a Greek delta epsilon alpha, English wit, etc., Latin video, I see, etc. The Sanskrit term Veda as a common noun means knowledge, but can also be used to refer to fields of study unrelated to liturgy or ritual, e.g., in Agada Veda, medical science, Sasya Veda, science of agriculture, or Sarpa Veda, science of snakes. Durveda means with evil knowledge, ignorant. A related word Vedana appears in hymn 8, 19.5 of the Rig Veda. It was translated by Ralph D. H. Griffith as ritual law, as studying the Veda, by the 14th century Indian scholar Sayana, as bundle of grass by Max Muller, and as with the Veda by H. H. Wilson. Vedas are called Marai or Vaimalai in parts of South India. Marai literally means hidden, a secret, mystery. In some South Indian communities such as Iyengas, the word Veda includes the Tamil writings of the Alvar saints, such as Divyat Prabandham. For example, Tiruvamalai. Chronology. The Vedas are among the oldest sacred texts. The Samhitas date to roughly 1700 to 1100 BCE, and the Circumvedic texts, as well as the redaction of the Samhitas, date to c. 1000 to 500 BCE, resulting in a Vedic period, spanning the mid-2nd to mid-1st millennium BCE, or the Late Bronze Age and the Iron Age. The Vedic period reaches its peak only after the composition of the mantra texts, with the establishment of the various shakas all over northern India which annotated the mantra Samhitas with Brahmana discussions of their meaning, and reaches its end in the age of Buddha and Panini and the rise of the Mahayana Padas. Michael Witzel gives a time span of c. 1500 BCE to c. 500–400 BCE. Witzel makes special reference to the Near Eastern Mitanni material of the 14th century BCE, the only epigraphic record of Indo-Aryan contemporary to the Rigvedic period. He gives 150 BCE as a terminus ante-Quem for all Vedic Sanskrit literature, and 1200 BCE as terminus post-Quem for the Atharva Veda. Transmission of texts in the Vedic period was by oral tradition alone, preserved with precision with the help of elaborate mnemonic techniques. A literary tradition set in only in post-Vedic times, after the rise of Buddhism in the Maurya period. Perhaps earliest in the Kamva ascension of the Yajurveda about the 1st century BCE. However, oral tradition predominated until c. 1000 CE. Due to the ephemeral nature of the manuscript material, surviving manuscripts rarely surpass an age of a few hundred years. The Sampurnanand Sanskrit University has a Rigveda manuscript from the 14th century. However, there are a number of older Veda manuscripts in Nepal that have dated from the 11th century onwards. Categories of Vedic texts. The term Vedic texts is used in two distinct meanings. Texts composed in Vedic Sanskrit during the Vedic period. Any text considered as connected to the Vedas, or a corollary of the Vedas. Vedic Sanskrit corpus. The corpus of Vedic Sanskrit texts includes the Samhitas, a collections of metric texts. There are 4 Vedic Samhitas: the Rigveda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, and Atharvaveda, most of which are available in several recensions. In some contexts, the term Veda is used to refer to these Samhitas. This is the oldest layer of Vedic texts, apart from the Rigvedic hymns, which were probably essentially complete by 1200 BCE, dating to c. the 12th to 10th centuries BCE. The complete corpus of Vedic mantras as collected in Bloomfield's Vedic Concordance consists of some 89,000 padis, of which 72,000 occur in the 4 Samhitas. The Brahmanas are prose texts that comment and explain the solemn rituals as well as expound on their meaning and many connective themes. Each of the Brahmanas is associated with one of the Samhitas or its recensions. The Brahmanas may either form separate texts or can be partly integrated into the text of the Samhitas. They may also include the Aranyakas and Upanishads. The Aranyakas, wilderness texts, or forest treatises, were composed by people who meditated in the woods as recluses and are the third part of the Vedas. The texts contain discussions and interpretations of ceremonies, from ritualistic to symbolic meta-ritualistic points of view. It is frequently read in secondary literature. Older Mukhya Upanishads. The Vedas are different from Vedic-era texts such as Shruta Sutras and Griha Sutras, which are Smrita texts. Together, the Vedas and these sutras form part of the Vedic Sanskrit corpus. While production of Brahmanas and Aranyakas ceased with the end of the Vedic period, additional Upanishads were composed after the end of the Vedic period. The Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads, among other things, interpret and discuss the Samhitas in philosophical and metaphorical ways to explore abstract concepts such as the absolute and the soul or the self. Introducing Vedanta philosophy, one of the major trends of later Hinduism. In other parts, they show evolution of ideas, such as from actual sacrifice to symbolic sacrifice, and of spirituality in the Upanishads. This has inspired later Hindu scholars such as Adi Shankara to classify each Veda into Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda. Shruti literature. The texts considered Vedic, in the sense of corollaries of the Vedas, is less clearly defined, and may include numerous post-Vedic texts such as the later Upanishads and the Sutra literature. Texts not considered to be Shruti are known as Smrita, or texts of remembered traditions. This indigenous system of categorization was adopted by Max Muller and, while it is subject to some debate, it is still widely used. As Axel Michaels explains, these classifications are often not tenable for linguistic and formal reasons. There is not only one collection at any one time, but rather several handed down in separate Vedic schools. Upanishads are sometimes not to be distinguished from Aranyakas. Brahmanas contain older strata of language attributed to the Samhitas. There are various dialects and locally prominent traditions of the Vedic schools. Nevertheless, it is advisable to stick to the division adopted by Max Muller because it follows the Indian tradition, conveys the historical sequence fairly accurately, and underlies the current editions, translations, and monographs on Vedic literature. The Upanishads are largely philosophical works, some in dialogue form. They are the foundation of Hindu philosophical thought and its diverse traditions. Of the Vedic corpus, they alone are widely known, and the central ideas of the Upanishads are at the spiritual core of Hindus' Vedic schools or ascensions. The four Vedas were transmitted in various sakas. Each school likely represented an ancient community of a particular area, or kingdom. Each school followed its own canon. Multiple recensions are known for each of the Vedas. Thus, states Witzel as well as Renu, in the 2nd millennium BCE, there was likely no canon of one broadly accepted Vedic texts, no Vedic scripture, but only a canon of various texts accepted by each school. Some of these texts have survived, most lost or yet to be found. Rig Veda, that survives in modern times, for example, is in only one extremely well-preserved school of Akalya, from a region called Vidya, in modern North Bihar, south of Nepal. The Vedic canon in its entirety consists of texts from all the various Vedic schools taken together. Each of the four Vedas were shared by the numerous schools, but revised, interpolated and adapted locally, in and after the Vedic period, giving rise to various recensions of the text. Some texts were revised into the modern era, raising significant debate on parts of the text which are believed to have been corrupted at a later date. The Vedas each have an index or Anukramani, the principal work of this kind being the general index or Sarvanukramani. Prodigious energy was expended by ancient Indian culture in ensuring that these texts were transmitted from generation to generation with inordinate fidelity. For example, memorization of the sacred Vedas included up to 11 forms of recitation of the same text. The texts were subsequently proofread by comparing the different recited versions. Forms of recitation included the Jatapatha, in which every two adjacent words in the text were first recited in their original order, then repeated in the reverse order, and finally repeated again in the original order. That these methods have been effective is testified to by the preservation of the most ancient Indian religious text, the Rig Veda, as redacted into a single text during the Brahmana period, without any variant readings within that school. The Vedas were likely written down for the first time around 500 BCE. However, all printed editions of the Vedas that survive in the modern times are likely the version existing in about the 16th century CE.